I'm Ariana Bradford, and this is the NIAM Project Podcast. Hey everyone, as I've mentioned, I am Ariana Bradford, and this is the NIAM Project Podcast, and you are listening to episode 8, the anniversary episode. Not the anniversary of the podcast, obviously, seeing as this is only episode 8, but it was my anniversary on Friday, and I thought in honor of that, it would be fun to bring my husband Mark in to speak with him about marriage, relationships, children, and maybe dig into his mind a bit about what it's like to be a parent on the male side. We talk quite often about what it's like to be a mother and what it's like to feel like we lose parts of ourselves and what the struggle is like, but we sometimes forget that we are in this as a team and that they have their own struggles and their own thoughts and their own experiences. And so I thought it might be interesting to go into that a bit. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
My name is Mark Bradford. I'm married to Ariana Bradford, best known for the NIAM Project.
Obviously.
We have 2 wonderful children, Miles, who's 5, and Charlie, who is 3. Originally born in the Bay Area, but moved from literally Silicon Valley to rural Southern Oregon, about a 120-acre ranch when I was 13, which is a pretty big change, going from Menlo Park to Rogue River, Oregon. We were literally 15 minutes away from anything, and then went from a private school to homeschooling. So another big change. From Silicon Valley, you see these people who are very ambitious and have accomplished a lot and have like kind of big dreams. And being in Southern Oregon, you learn it kind of another sort of life. Value of hard work, physical labor, and kind of where things come from. A lot of things that we just kind of take for granted in our everyday life. You kind of see how the sausage is made, literally and figuratively.
How the sausage is made.
It's an expression.
Your family didn't even make sausage.
Actually, we did.
What?
Oh, you learned something today.
Oh, yeah. God, you're making me look terrible right now.
Do you know anything about me?
I actually, everything that you just mentioned was totally new to me. I had no idea.
I've been hiding it.
Clearly.
These are part of my deep, dark secrets.
Yeah. You were homeschooled?
We bonded over this. You knew that part. Speaking of our 5-year anniversary, that was one of the things we first bonded over was our mutual homeschool experiences for the exact same duration, just high school.
Yep. And
how we managed, at least internally, we feel like, to turn out fairly normal.
Fairly normal. Yeah, we actually did connect over that. I remember you mentioned that you were homeschooled and you kind of stared at me because you thought that my face was
judgmental.
I was going to say...
That's the default.
Yeah, that's true. It was pretty... But I wasn't being judgmental. I was actually shocked because I hadn't met anybody else who had been homeschooled all through high school like I had. And it was kind of cool learning that there were other people out there like me, which is funny. And one thing that I always thought was kind of interesting, going back to when you were growing up, you always wanted to be a dad.
Oh, yeah. No, I knew that early on. My parents used to call me the Pied Piper because whenever we'd do any kind of a get together, right, where there was other children there, especially younger children, I would just love entertaining them, playing, just kind of very naturally stepped into that role. And so I, unlike a lot of guys who I've known, I've never feared having children, wondering if I would enjoy being a dad. That was always something that I never had any questions about.
Did you ever have it planned ahead of time how many kids you were going to have? Or like, did it ever occur to you how you figured that your life as a father might look? Or was that kind of just up in the air? You just knew you wanted to be a dad?
Oh, I had it planned out perfectly. An older boy, a younger girl, about 20 months apart, just like we executed on. So
was there also something in there about getting the woman pregnant 6 weeks in?
We call that an expedited timeline.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So clearly, from what we were just saying, Mark and I met September 28th, 2013. We started dating. Our first date was October 1st, 2013. We became official October 4th, 2013. And I found out I was pregnant December 14th, 2013. So we kind of did things a little out of order. We wound up getting married October 4th of 2014 with a 2.5-month-old son. And we both constantly are waiting for the day that he's able to do the math. We have to have that conversation. But it was kind of a crazy...
It's all right. I was at my parents' wedding. They're still married. I know exactly how long because it's how old I am.
This is the Bradford.
Can I tell the story about the suit?
You can tell the story about the suit.
Oh God, I love the story. So I was also in my parents' wedding. I was a bit of a surprise as well. I'm the oldest of three for my dad's second marriage, and I am wearing in the wedding pictures a blue linen suit, very classy. My little, 2-month-old self just rocked that suit. And it just so happened on a visit back home to the ranch, I found said suit in a pile of kids stuff I was going through, trying to pull out some toys for the kids. And I recognized it immediately and decided at that moment that Miles would wear said suit for our wedding, which he did. He looks great as well. Then, if he did like who wore it best, I'd probably take the cake, but this suit has hence been christened the Bradford Bastard suit.
And we're going to
continue the tradition.
We are going to retire the Bradford Bastard suit. We have played out the lucky weddings in the Bradford Bastard suit.
Why would you mess with success like that?
Because we probably shouldn't even have one. I don't think many families have a suit.
It's like our crest.
Yeah, that's because I've told people this before, and I always thought it was kind of interesting that we had to trust one another in raising kids before we even really needed to trust one another in like picking out bed linens. Like we kind of did things hardest first and then the easiest, like almost backwards from the way most people do it. And when you think about it, if there's a stress test that any relationship goes under that can really rock things, parenting is definitely one of those.
It's up there.
It's up there.
He understatedly.
That's because I still remember that time that I was like, I hadn't slept well during my pregnancy for like 5 days, something crazy like that, because Miles kept rolling around in my stomach in the morning. And I don't even remember what you had done, but like if I was so sleep deprived and angry, and I don't even remember what it was that I yelled at you for. I just started screaming at you, and you just looked at me and you go, I think you need a nap. And I just started crying, and I was like, you're right, I do. And it was super lucky that I had somebody who was able to see through that, because I feel like, That's such a stressful situation, and that wasn't even with the kids being born yet.
No, I mean, it, especially an infant, pushes you to your emotional and I don't want to say physical limits, but on the exhaustive side, right, which just has an exponential effect in terms of the severity of those emotions, right? You see someone at their worst, right? Someone at their weakest, and while you are at that same place. And at the same time, you're also figuring out things like things you value, and how you want to raise your children. And that's a lot to throw into a relationship, which is still, learning how another person likes their sandwiches.
Their sandwiches. You did find like the most trivial thing you possibly could. Because do you even know how I like my sandwiches?
Plain, I assume.
That is not true.
Meat, cheese, maybe a light thing of mayonnaise, and for a little extra spice, Dijon mustard.
Screw you. That is
no
not
tomato,
true.
no vegetable of any kind.
Okay, that part is true. Even though I've started to like
and then another layer of cheese.
There is a lot of cheese.
I've told you, I just nailed it.
So, no, but you forgot. You forgot
butter both sides. Oh, it's actually a grilled cheese sandwich. That's your
forgot
ideal sandwich.
You forgot the toasted bread.
No, it's a grilled cheese sandwich.
Well, I don't want to grill
toasted.
cheese. No, there would be meat. There would be meat. Gotcha. So
you're saying you don't enjoy a good grilled cheese sandwich every now and then?
A good grilled cheese sandwich? Yeah, sure.
Is that one of your favorite sandwiches?
No.
Top 3?
No.
Huh?
I don't know.
See, we're still learning new things about each other.
That's what happens when we
skipped all this.
We were just
it's good to finally get to this 6 years later.
In the DVD of marriage, we were just like, nah, let's just skip straight to the baby chapter. We don't need to see the intro. So to me, it seems like for the male side of things, it seems like you guys have a little bit more of a ramp up time, so to speak. You guys have a little bit more of a chance to get things out of your system when you find out that you're going to be fathers. Like, you have more of a chance to get your head wrapped around the concept of, I am about to have this small person in my life that I am going to be responsible for. It's not like your mind has to do that switch quite so quickly. Would you say I'm correct on that?
I'd say partially correct. Yeah, we have a 9-month buffer period. The challenge of it, though, is it doesn't quite feel real to us, right? Because it's abstract. We are figuratively and literally disconnected from it, right? From the child, literally. Like, I can see your belly growing, but I don't feel it moving around inside me. I can feel it through you, which is really, really neat. But even that isn't until the end. And I'm not feeling the physical changes. I'm experiencing it secondhand through late night runs. What was the food that you craved? It was ice cream. It was ice cream.
It was ice cream the second time, because the first time I woke you up at like midnight wanting eggs, and you just looked at me and rolled back over and went to sleep. You did not make me any eggs. The second time,
we should edit that part out.
No, we're not. We're not that part I'm telling. No, but you know what? The second time I have to give you credit, because the second time I told you I wanted ice cream, and you initially were like, "No, I'm not going to get you ice cream," and then I told you had no soul, and then you went and got me ice cream anyway. And most people would not get ice cream for someone who told them that they have no soul. So I gotta give you credit for that. You did that.
Right. So
you asked. I was just answering you.
My point was, we have this time to get used to the idea, which I took advantage of. At the same time, it's like I didn't know how to prepare. So when the baby came, there was still a lot of adjustments that I had to make because, it wasn't until the very end that it became real to me. And I think actually it goes even a bit beyond that, because for the first maybe 6-9 months of a kid's life, and I've had this discussion with a lot of other dads who have experienced the same thing, you feel like, or not even like a supporting actor, you're kind of relegated to this role where you're just trying to figure out how you can step in and help. And I could tell that you felt this incredible bond. And of course, I loved my children from immediately, but it wasn't until about 6 or 9 months in where the kids started becoming really interactive, where I felt like I was stepping into my role as a father. And like I said, this has not been, I don't think this is just a me thing. I think this is something a lot of dads have felt, is we don't quite know how to help early on. We want to, we want to be supportive. We want to make things easier for you. We want to bond with the children, but I find that I really enjoy things a lot more now that the kids are playing, roughhousing, being silly. Like, all those things came as naturally to me as being nurturing to an infant and bonding with an infant seemed to be for you.
To be completely fair, I think that for a lot of us, though, we don't really know what parenting truly means until you're in it. Like,
oh no, no.
Like, I mean, I remember, for example, and you remember this, so this is kind of more for the people who are listening right now, but I remember that after, Miles was born, after our son was born, I remember always feeling like, oh, well, I'm going to sit and we're going to have these emotional bonding moments while I breastfeed him. And then first off, it hurt. It was terrible. I had thrush like twice. And then we get to 3 months in and I couldn't even make enough for him. And I remember sitting on the couch sobbing at like 1 a.m. because he was crying because he was still hungry and we wound up having to supplement with formula, and I felt like I was a failure. And I remember turning to you and asking you if I was a bad mother. Nobody ever told me that it was possible that you might not be able to make enough to feed your kid. I didn't even figure out how common that was until me and those other 3 women in our birth group met up. And of the 4 of us, 3 of us were already supplementing. Up until that point, I had been told that parenting was going to be, that these were just natural things that parents can do. And it just continues every day. Like, now my new thing is, nobody told me how much worrying you were going to do as a parent, even though you don't really seem to do the worrying. You seem to leave that for me to do. But, I was never really told how much worrying there is. It's hard. It's definitely hard. I just find it so fascinating that from your end of things, because your idea of what parenting was supposed to be didn't quite match up perfectly, you had a hard time figuring out how to work around it. And I am going to say this, you actually did a really great job of taking direction, though. Like, I remember asking you quite a few times for help, and as long as I was specific about how I needed help, you were very good at picking up on that.
Yeah, and I think that's, if I would share anything with mothers, I'm sure there are some husbands and just fathers who are going to refuse and not be interested in helping, but for a lot of us, we would love to. We just have no idea what to do. And it is so great when you provide direct instructions and feedback.
Actually, it's gotten kind of amazing, coming off of the kid aspect for a minute. I find that it's actually gotten very interesting in that you and I have really built this kind of open communication where when I need when I need something, especially like just yesterday, for example, I started getting just exhausted. I could tell that my battery was on low. I was just done. And I said, listen, I need a break. And I was really impressed with how I said that. And your response was very open and interested in taking that in, and not only doing that, but trying to figure out a way to make that happen, which I think is kind of a very important piece, that not just that I need to be able to come to you for that kind of thing, but that you need to be able to come to me.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness, because I work, I kind of have a built-in break away from the kids, and so I mean, it's not like they can't stress me out or have those moments, but overall, I think I get a lot of the fun stuff.
You do. I mean, but I think probably, and I mentioned this earlier, and I think it is true, I fall into it too all the time, is I think that especially when you have two couples or when you have two people in a couple who are working very hard in different ways, you get caught up in your own shit sometimes, and you forget that the other person is dealing with stuff as well. And you and I have had those conversations before where, you have thought that I wasn't aware of something, and maybe I wasn't aware, but it was because I was so busy with the kids and keeping schedules together and trying to keep my own schedule together and trying to get, episodes out on time or articles out on time. And there have been times that I've been mad at you because I thought that you were purposely not doing things correctly. And then it turned out that, you'd been working really hard, or things just weren't going really well at work, or you were trying to figure out how to balance building things up at work and taking care of the house and helping with the kids. And so yeah, you get a lot of the playtime, but it's not like you're not doing stuff behind the scenes. And I try my best to remember that. It's hard sometimes because, I get exhausted, I get tired, I get frustrated, but you're doing a lot. And, I think that honestly, in most cases, we get really frustrated with the fact that we seem to be the only ones dealing with certain things. And I get that. And I feel it often. And I'm not going to say that I will never feel it again, or that I didn't even feel it earlier today. But we also can't lose sight of the fact that they are doing something, and that they are doing something that we don't have to do. And you don't know what that thing is, or maybe you do know what it is, but you forget because you're frustrated. But it's important to try to keep that in mind, because you don't want to feel unappreciated, but you also don't want the other person to feel unappreciated.
So what are some of the things that we have done that have really helped avoid or resolve feelings of imbalance? Because I think in any relationship, it's not going to be a 50-50 split perfectly down the line, right? There are things that someone might be better at, enjoys doing, or it just makes sense for them to do. So how do you avoid resentment? How do you keep your sanity? And how do you maintain a positive relationship with your partner when things are just differently weighted?
Are you asking me questions on my own show?
I've turned the tables.
So here are a couple things. First off, I maintain that no relationship can ever be perfect 50-50. That little dream went out the window when we had kids. Once you have kids, I don't think there's ever going to be a 50-50, because one person is always going to be more sick, more tired, busier. It's just not going to happen. The best that you could do is to try to get closer to 50-50. And before I kind of go into what I think we've done, and I feel free to chime in on this, I do want to point out that you and I are still on this journey in some ways, but we have made mistakes and learned from them, I think.
Oh yeah, I mean, none of this stuff is set it and forget it.
No, we've definitely we've definitely fallen into that terrible who does more conversation that I keep telling everyone they should not have. I feel like the best thing that we have learned to do is we have learned to acknowledge what one another does before we follow up with a request. When I've been working really hard with the kids, but maybe you need my help with, laundry or something like that, you'll say, hey, listen, I've noticed, that you've been really busy with the kids, and I very much appreciate that, but I need some help with the laundry. Or if I notice that I need a break and I need you to take over with the kids, but I know that you've been working really hard, I'll usually, if I'm not like ready to strangle someone, I'm usually like, hey, listen, I know you're working really hard and I know you've got this, and this going on, but could you please take over? And so it's made it so that we know we're not asking for something without appreciation for what the other person's done, which I think is a big thing. And I think that we have also done a pretty good job of trying to learn when the other person's line is being crossed in terms of exhaustion, because you definitely feel a lot less appreciated when you're tired.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we are like way over the time that I thought we were going to take. And that's okay, because I'm going to edit like the shit out of this. But
yeah, I'd recommend that. There's a lot of filler here.
That's okay.
I'd say cut out like 75.
70%. So just take your voice out of it then.
Yeah, just take me out.
Just take you out of it.
I probably will. I'd be a lot more likely to listen to it if I don't have to hear my own voice.
Actually, I polled my audience on Instagram and asked them what questions they would ask. And there was one in particular that really stuck out to me, and I'm very interested in your answer to this one. Do you feel that after becoming a father, you have struggled with connecting with who you are, or who you were before you had children?
Yeah, but I wonder how much that is just a function of time, right? There isn't as much time to do the things that I used to self-identify. I saw myself as the person who was always up for an adventure, and it could be last minute and I was ready to roll, right? Someone could say, hey, Mark, we're going to go do this. Can you be there in 30 minutes? And my answer was almost always yes. And that is just simply not an option. Turns out, when you're a parent, because you can't get anywhere in 30 minutes. You can't even leave the house. So just that whole kind of being capricious and spontaneous, that was something I saw as a big part of myself, and that has changed. Now it manifests itself in new ways by being able to make a game even in boring situations, right? If I'm standing in a line with the kids, I can think of things to do there. But my self-identity in terms of having this huge, broad social circle that I could kind of bounce around on a weekend night with 4 or 5 different groups, well, that's also not an option. Now I have a select small group of friends, mostly dad friends, who I try to hang out with when I can, or family, or,
Do you still feel that causes a bit of an identity crisis for you? Or do you feel that you're pretty much still in touch with who you are?
I still feel I'm in touch with who I am. I feel like when you're pre-kid and able to live that lifestyle, you have a lot of friends who are just simply friends of convenience, right? You aren't friends because you share some deep bond and strong values. It's because they live close to you. They like going out and doing the same kind of things in their free time that you enjoy doing. And when you don't have free time, you have to find different. It's just very different when you do have the rare opportunity to get together with another adult outside your household one-on-one. But that hasn't changed who I am. I feel like in some ways I've kind of had to really examine those things, because I realize I'm having an influence on another person in terms of who they become, right? And one of the most challenging but rewarding things I've found about being a parent had to think about, like, well, where did this thing that I really like about myself come from? How do I instill this in somebody else? And at the same time, you're thinking, how do I not pass on the things I don't like about myself? How do I help them avoid those same things? And I've realized this, especially watching our oldest son enter school. The reality is, so much of that stuff, the answer to it is experience. He has to learn it himself, and that sucks because experience hurts. That's how we learn. And as much as I would love to tell him, hey, middle school, right? It's coming up in a few years. Here's the perfect map to how to navigate that. You can't.
No, you can't do that. And that's probably one of the scariest things. And I think that's something we've both agreed on in the past, is the scariest thing is going to be watching him, essentially walk into the lion's den and have to learn his own way out. And that's a hard thing. So that's about it, my love. So
I have more things to say.
I actually have a lot that
power.
Stop. I actually have a lot more I'd love to talk with you about. This has been really fun. So with that, I guess we're going to sign off. Thank you very much for being here. I'm probably going to make you do this another time.
Oh, I was not aware of that.
You live in my house. You can't get away. So, say bye now. You did a great job. I love you.
Bye, Niam.
The Niam Project podcast is written and produced by me, Ariana Bradford. If you want to find out more about us, you can check us out at weareniam.com or on social media under The Niam Project. Thank you very much to Mark for giving me some of his time today, and we'll see you next time.